Hello everybody, I hope everybody's well. Welcome to the fifth installment of the Revit series that we've been running. So last week Rob covered off what we can see on my screen here, this building that we're looking at. So we covered some walls, we covered off windows and doors and things like that. And what we're going to do this week is we're going to cover off components and how components work inside of Revit. I may make a few tweaks as well just to the model, but my name's Johnny, so just in case you're wondering where Rob had gone, I did part 2, I think, and then we skipped 2, and then I've picked up on this one. So trying to make things a bit random, a bit more clicky, keep things going, I guess. So like I say, this is going to cover components. I'm going to go through all the different types of components in Revit. So I suppose the common terminology there is families. If you're coming from AutoCAD, you would have been used to blocks, I guess, probably. But we're going to cover off all of the different types that you can get inside of Revit and their uses and how they work. So we're actually going to fit out this building with some components so that it looks kind of ready to go. And then discuss as well bringing components into Revit. So the reason we're going to discuss bringing them in is because once you get into a very large model, you're going to need to make sure that the components you bring in are the right ones. There's a few sort of best practices when you do bring in components. It will go a little bit of a way into sort of family creation, but I'll also discuss where you can download things from online, some of the resources that I've used in the past to be able to get your components into Revit. So during this session, I'm going to kit out the ground floor. I will do a couple of the other levels just to show you if you have sort of maybe the same thing going on a couple of levels, how you can save a bit of time with components. Rob covered off in the last session adding things like windows and doors, which are a type of component. They're actually wall-hosted components, so you can't put those in without a wall. And I will go through some other components that are similar, but we're going to put in things like furniture, things like columns. We'll put in things like lights as well that need to go on the roof, the ceiling, and how you can lay them out as well properly. So we'll dive right in. So first of all, when we're looking at components, we probably want to be placing these in a plan. We may also want to have a section open so that we can see where they're actually being placed in the Z-axis. So what I will do in this session is actually create a section for you so you can see how you can do that. So first of all, what we need to do is, I'll create the section first, just show you how you go about doing that. This can be useful, obviously, your model is live, so if I grab the section tool in the quick access toolbar at the top, just here, you can also go to view, find section here, and it does the same thing. So I'm going to draw a section straight across my model here, and pop that across one of the rooms. You can grab this and drag it wherever you like. They're really, really handy to just have one in, even if you're going to put it on a sheet, just so you can see what's happening in the project. So once you put that section in, you're going to see that you have sections in your project browser. And I can double click on that section and head to that view, and you can see there quite nicely that I have a section. Because I'm only going to be doing the ground floor, I'm going to grab the blue dot grip and just drag that down so that I can just see the level that I'm going to be working on, just to keep me sort of in the right place. So if you do change the size of the section, just be aware that it's also going to change the this blue dotted line around here so that you can see what you're actually seeing in the view. So you just want to make sure your annotation reflects what you can see in that box. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to close the 3D view and I'm actually going to hit WT on my keyboard so I can see my section and I can see my plan. So this would probably be how I would normally work if I was putting in components inside of Revit. My background's been structural, so steel beams and making sure that the steels were at the right heights was really important. So having a section open was key to just make sure that those steels went into the right place. We're talking about furniture and placing things, it probably matters less. We can use more of the properties and we'd know whether it's going to go in the right place. So the first type of component that we're going to discuss will be just a standard component. I'm actually going to go from a normal component all the way up to one of the most complicated components, which is an adaptive component. I'm only going to go through that theoretically. I won't add any because it would take more than the half an hour that we have. So I'm going to grab a component and I'm actually going to bring one in so you can see how to use one. or how to get one from the Revit library. So I just use the architectural tab and then component here. You'll find that you have component in all of the different disciplines along the top. So systems has its component as well, somewhere at the end here. They all go to the same place, essentially. They're just components that are loaded into your project. So if you don't find a component, when you click on component and look in the type selector, it's because it's not loaded into your project. So we might need to bring something in from a library that we have. I'm going to do that. So I'm going to head to my modify place component, and then I'm going to hit load family. And I'm just going to find a basic chair. So I'm going to kit one of these rooms out as kind of maybe a classroom and also one out as a toilet. And that will cover most of the families that you would come across inside of Revit. So in the install of Revit that we have all of these generic items that we can use. So when you're conceptualizing a project, these are quite handy. So we could look for things like seating, and then we could find just the sort of generic chair that we could use. The reason these are handy is because if we download from something online and use it, it's likely to have all of that supplier's information in it. Whereas if we use a chair from this library, it's just going to be bog standard out of the box, nothing kind of in it. Which can be handy at the beginning of a project, just to kind of give an indication of what a room is going to be. So with this component, because it's a component, I can just put it anywhere. Revit's not going to care whether I place that outside on a field or in a wall or anything like that. It's just a component that I can place. And if you look in the properties, it's being placed on a level. So I'm going to place this in the room. Rob mentioned this last week, but you can use spacebar to spin your component. One of the cool things that Revit does, and this is really handy if you have diagonal walls or walls that you want to place things on, if you hover over a sort of radius or a diagonal, you can hit the space bar and it will actually create the object perpendicular, or set the object perpendicular to whatever line it is that you hit space bar over. And then when you come out of that, you can hit space bar and just spin around anywhere else. So I'm just going to place one of those chairs in a corner, just up here. I'm then also going to place one of the items that I had, which was a desk, and I'm just going to place that in front of the chair. This is also a component, so it just gets placed on the level. You'll become aware of what objects are, or sort of what inside of Revit, based on what options you get when you place them. So we now have a chair and a desk, and I'm not quite sure whether that's the right round, and this is a really handy reason perhaps to have a section in this case. So I can actually see that this desk is facing the wrong way for this chair. But if I click on it and hit spacebar, I can spin it around and then just pop it back into its place. And there we go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the copy tool to grab these and just copy this around the room. So I'm going to select both of them by holding down my control and selecting both, then hit the copy option in my modified tools, then hit multiple, and then just copy this around my room. So I think we've already covered copy in one of the previous series, so this should be fairly, everyone should be fairly well acquainted with this by now. And I'm copying that, aligning it to the other desks. What I can do very quickly is just move these back a little bit so there's enough space for perhaps the person at the front of the room to stand. But this could be a classroom, and these components they can sit anywhere. Like I said, they are just components. They're just built as a block, and you can put those in kind of wherever you want. You can change the level, so you can grab this particular item. I could put it on a different level if I wanted to, but it is hosted to a level. So it's a level hosted component, but it is just a component. So that's one type of component, and if that level moves, that component is going to move with it because it's hosted to that level. So the next type of component that we're going to look at is a ceiling-based component. We'll do this in the same room, just to keep sort of consistency. The difference is we're going to need to be in a reflected ceiling plan. So this is going to be things like your squares, maybe recessed or not recessed lighting that you might have in a room. But the only place that you're going to be able to put it is in a ceiling. So it's a ceiling-based family. There are certain functionalities that will allow you to place it in different places, and when we bring this in, you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to do the same as before, or slightly the same. I'm going to go to Insert this time, and I'm going to Load Family. Pretty much the same thing. And then again, I'm going to find in the generic families the light that I'm looking for. So let's go to Lighting, then look for Architectural. I'm going to go for an internal light, and I should have some square lights. So I've got this rectangular downlight that I could use. I'm going to use this round LED. Actually, no, I'm going to see if I can find one that's slightly different. So generally, if you flick through these photos, and the little thumbnails on the right, you can actually tell what the family is, whether it's going to be a component or hosted. So this one here in particular, you can see that it's going to be hosted because it has a square block on it that suggests it's going to be hosted. That when you build the family, you build it as though it's being hosted. I'll bring this one in just because I know it's going to be hosted as a good example. So now I've brought that in, what I can do is head to the systems, and then I should be able to find that either if I went to a lighting fixture, so I've got that round LED. I'd probably also find it if I clicked on component. It's the same thing, it's just the component option that we have there is more generic, and the lighting fixture is only going to have lightings in this list. So what I can find, level or something like that, a lighting work plane, and you can host all your lights to it, and it allows you to move that work plane, and they all stay hosted to the same place. The way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to place this sort of a little bit randomly, haphazardly in the middle, and then I'm going to use the, actually I'll just place that roughly in the middle, there we go. If I was placing this correctly, probably just because I do want to get it right, the way I would do this is maybe just head to my annotate tab, head to detail line, and just draw a very quick line between these 2 points, grab this light, use the move tool, find the center, and then just snap that to the center point of that line. Just, I guess, a little kind of tip. I'll just move it away and then move it back so it's struggling with itself. There we go. Cool, and then I can just delete that line. And now that I've got one in the right place, the whole project is going to be very easy. I could click on copy, use multiply, click on the corners, and then I can just put these in the right places. So the reason this is different to the component I placed before, like I say, is because this is using a face to place. So I could, if I wanted to, actually use this in a section, and I could place it on the wall using the face as well. But it works differently to the components that we looked at with this desk and the chair. So the family is just built slightly differently. There are certain things in Revit that just make you model a certain way so that you can't, the way that you use the family is as the design is supposed to be to make things easier for yourself. So I can't actually see those lights in my section. So what I might want to do is head to my section and just see whereabouts those lights perhaps are. I'm also going to change in my section the detail level to fine just to see if they appear. So that's very common inside of Revit. Sometimes you'll find that in different levels of detail, the family has been built in a certain way to only show up in those different styles. So I can see those lights are in the right place. What can happen sometimes, depending on the type of light you bring in and where you put it, is if you were accidentally putting these in on level 0, you would just see those on the floor instead. So this is where it's really worthwhile having the section open so you can see that the room is populating as it should be. Once you've got one right, you know that you can just copy it and paste the rest like I've done there. So that's a ceiling-based option. We have already looked at doors, but what I'll quickly do is maybe discuss how you could bring in a door from a library from online. So I actually have a couple of options, and this is really not going to aim at any particular option, but you have the NBS library, BIM object library, and BIM store library. They all provide objects that you can download and use. It's free. It's free for anybody to, as somebody who's using the items, to be able to download any supplier's door or object and be able to use. So it's very easy to do. Just for the sake of time, what I will do is actually just use one out of the box. A lot of these libraries do have add-ins that you can get, which will allow you to quickly open up an application that downloads that automatically inside the project. But if we were looking at bringing in, actually what I will do is just for the sake of showing you maybe how to bring in an object from outside of Revit, because we've been using an internal library, is I will open up. So this is just a family inside a folder, a Windows Explorer one that I've just downloaded. And if you want to bring a family into Revit, I would say the procedure would be take the family and put it into a project library. So be formal about where you're putting things. Don't just have them in the downloads or randomly all over the place. Build a library up of the objects that you download and make it more formal about doing that kind of thing. So the way you can bring this family into Revit, the quick way, is just to click and then drag into the project, and then that will just bring that particular component into this view. So that item in itself, I think there's a little bit of an issue bringing it in, so I will just bring a door in, but for most items that will just work as it should. So I'm going to go to the architecture tab again, I'll hit door, and then I could select any door from the list from my project, or I can load one in. So the only caveat with doors, obviously, is that you cannot just place a door willy-nilly. You have to place it in a wall. So if I go to my internal doors and I find a new type of door, perhaps something with some glazing so people can see through it just to check what's going on inside, you'll see that if you try and place it in a hallway or anywhere but a wall, it will say no. So you won't be able to do that. And I'm just going to change where this door sits to the left-hand side here, and I'm going to delete this door here. So just a little tip about where to get families. If you do Google searches for components, you'll probably come across a site called Revit City. Be careful about what you download from sites that maybe have, so Revit City is more of a sort of a bin that people just put loads and loads of stuff with no formal auditing of the particular item they're putting in. And be careful about the size of family you put in. You really don't want to be putting in, let's say, like if we were having maybe 50 of these chairs, if that chair is, say, a megabyte a piece, that's probably too large for something that you're going to put into this project 100 times. If it's just going to be 4 in this room, then that's probably okay, but you just need to be careful about the size of objects you're putting into your project, because if this project is a large one, and say you're getting into sort of the tens of thousands of components, you're really going to want those components to be small and compact so that your Revit stays working fast. So unless you have a ridiculously powerful machine, just be careful about what you put in. Some manufacturers I have seen will just get their fabricated item and turn it into a Revit model and put it directly in, which can really kill your machine when you're putting it in. Cool. Okay, so we've covered standard components, we've covered wall-hosted components, the doors here, and we've also covered ceiling-based components. So we will look at another wall-hosted component. So a lot like the door, it's just a sort of different concept. So I'm going to go to my Insert tab again, and then I'm going to go to Load Family. And this time I'm just going to place some sockets around the room. So they work the same way as anything that's hosted will do. So if we go down to Electrical, Architectural, Terminals, and we'll just choose a double socket. Here we go. So when we're placing a socket, again, you can just go to Component to find that in the list. You would also be able to go to your systems and get it from the same place. This one is called a double socket. And I'm going to quickly just show you a quick way of finding a family if you know the name, but you cannot find it. For whatever reason, you can't find it. So electrical double socket. I know the name, but I don't know where it is. In your project browser, what you can do when you're looking for a component is just right-click and hit search. And then you can search for anything. You can search for views, you can search for legends, schedules. If you know the name of something but you have no idea where it is, you can search your entire project, which on large projects, I promise you, is very, very useful. So I'm just going to type in DBL, and then I'm going to hit next. So we've got a double tri-wall, we've got a few of those, but what I can do is I can just type in maybe underscore socket. I hope that I got that right. So electrical equipment, double socket, there we go, there it is. So if I knew perhaps the company name, or if I knew something, a small part of the name, I can search for that thing and I'll find it in the masses of stuff that I have in a project. And a quick way to get this out now is just to click and drag from the project browser. And you see there that I can just put it into the project. Really, really simple, really easy. Some people just work like that. They'll just find stuff in their family project browser and just drag it in, and they won't use any of the placements up here. Really preference, to be honest. But what I can do now is I can just go around my project. I can just put these perhaps where I might place them. So there we go. And what you'll likely find is that these might look different depending, again, what level of detail you have, and that'll just be built into the family. These ones are actually built the same way all the way through. That's probably not the norm, but the way these ones have been built. So again, these, when I'm placing these, are wall hosted. Just to quickly go through that again. So I'm going to click on one and I'm going to use the create similar or CS on your keyboard. When you're placing these, so this is actually, it is a wall hosted. There is a elevation from level built into the family at 257.5. I guess that might be to do with coursing perhaps. You can change that if you want to after the fact, but when you're popping around your model, you'll find that it will only sit itself on a wall or something to host to, because it's a wall hosted family. Cool, so that's wall hosted. The other types of family we get are going to be things like columns, so where you have the option to place them between 2 points. So I will put an architectural column in here just to show how this works. So I guess perhaps we've got some columns we've got maybe in this room running down it. The way the columns work, like I say, it's slightly different to some of the other families. You're going to have a base level that it's going to be placed at, and then a top level to also constrain it. So if I just place this here and then select it, I have the option to say the base level is going to be level 0. Actually, if I place this in my room, you'll see this in section. That might be more useful. So this particular column here, I've got my base level at level 0 and my top level at level 1. And I can change those. I can move those around. But this is what's called I suppose a two-level family. And inside the family, you'll have the base level and the top level to build between. And when you bring it into the project, it just uses those levels and the offsets you give it to go between. So things like walls are also hosted, but you wouldn't build those outside of Revit. So columns, I think probably one of the only ones I can think of that you would use that type of family for. Cool. So that's, like I said, the 2.2 level family that you get. The other type of family that you can get is a line-based family. So the way that works, I don't think I've got any examples of this, but if you were drawing, say, a fence, the way it would work is you would just click, and the pattern that you've created for the fence would just array along that line. So we do have railings, and probably if I was going to create a fence, I might create a railing-based family. But the difference between the pattern-based, so the line-based, and the railing is that the railing is a system family. So I think we've mentioned system families before, but system families are things that are built into Revit. So things like walls, ceilings, roofs, railings, stairs. They're actually built in the project that you're creating. You wouldn't build them outside of Revit and then bring them in. So one of the last types of families that I'm going to mention are called adaptive families. These work they're very freeform in terms of the way they work. So if you've ever needed to create very kind of fluid things inside of Revit, bespoke things, this is an example of a project that I did the other day using an adaptive family. Each one of these panels adapts itself to a surface. And then you can sort of create sort of fluid designs like this. You can also use it to create sort of bespoke furniture as well. So if you were looking at, say, creating a nice sweeping profile of something, and you needed to be able to click on points and the profile just follows where you're clicking, that would also work. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to discuss ways of essentially maybe taking what you've done in terms of a design. I'm going to take this column out, and then copying it up the building and using different techniques to kind of use the components that you've put into your project. So with these here, I think Rob has made these levels similar all the way up. So what you might find you need to do is, say, take this design, and it might be the same on a couple of different levels in the project. And the way Rob put this into the project, or copied the windows and doors and floors up the project, was to use the copy-paste align to selected levels. What I'm going to do that's very slightly different to that is I'm going to grab the furniture I have in here, and I'm actually going to create a group. So that's GP on your keyboard. So I'm going to click create group, and I'm going to say, cool, group 1, I'm going to call this class layout. So now these components are all in a group. And that can be useful for a number of reasons. One of them being that if I just copy this across to the room next door, I have two of the same group now. And if I want to make a change to one of these groups, I can just click it. And I'm going to move this one back very slightly. Actually, no, I leave it as it is. If I select this group and then I click on Edit Group in the ribbon at the top, and what I can do now is I can only select the elements inside that group. So I'm going to select these front two desks, and I'm just going to copy those down to the front here. So I've got a bit of a clash with the door, but that's okay. And I'm going to hit Finish. And what that'll do is it'll edit both groups. So if you have two rooms or two of anything that are going to be the same throughout the project, what you can do is create groups with those and then change them, and they will update each other. So if I just move these back very slightly, there we go. And the other reason that is useful is, like I said, everything that you want to use is in the project browser. So you have groups in the project browser. So if I didn't have these to be able to copy and paste from, I can go to my project browser and I can have a selection of class layouts in a project that I can just click and drag into my project and just put them wherever I want them. So it means that I could save loads of different types of layouts, loads of different options perhaps, that I can just chop and change between. And it means that then I don't have to keep on laying everything out. I can just have a standard set of layouts that I'm going to put around the project. Maybe if I've got different flat types, I could have all of the furniture laid out for each of those flat types as groups, and I can just bring those in as I need to. So what I'm going to do now is I will do what Rob did. I'm going to grab one of these class layouts that I have here. I'm going to hit the copy to clipboard button at the top here. I'm then going to go paste to align to selected levels. And that's going to give me the option then to choose the levels that I want to copy it to. And I'm going to choose level 1, 2, and 3, and then hit OK. So that'll do exactly the same as what Rob did in the last session. It's going to copy it up to each of those levels. What it's going to allow me to do, though, is that if I do make any changes to just one of these groups, so we actually only want to have maybe 4 in a class now, I can delete these tables out, I can click the Finish button, and I've just changed every single one of these layouts immediately. So groups are very, very useful inside of Revit. If you want to save this group to be able to use on a different project, just to go over how you might do that, you can go to File. If you hover over Save As, you'll find that you have Library here, and you can save that group as it is. So like I can say, you can group lots of different things. This would allow you to group your different layouts, save them, take them onto another project, and be able to use those again if you needed to. If you had very similar projects, perhaps you're working on a set of buildings or a set of like gyms that are going to be rolled out across the country, and you need to make sure every single one is going to be exactly the same. Groups are very useful for doing that kind of thing. They have a load of other uses as well, but when you're placing components, they can really speed up your sort of standard layouts of things as well. So what I'll quickly do is, before we finish, just add in a couple more components. Got like a minute before we sort of finish. So in components, we could pick some of the other stuff that we have. What have we got in here? There's nothing sort of that we haven't already covered. If we load in a family very quickly, we could load in what I did say we were going to do, which was a toilet, just so people know where toilets are. You can go to plumbing, go to architectural, fixtures, and what you'll probably find is most of this stuff is very American, that it comes with Revit. But like I said, there's a plethora of things online that you'll be able to download these with. So I'll grab a basin, I'll hit open. So one of the things you'll want to do, make sure when you're placing these basins in the correct place, is double check the level they sit on and the elevation and the properties. The properties will contain everything you need to know about what's going to happen with this when you place it. Also checking the ribbon to make sure that you're placing it on the right face when you're placing the component. When I place this, I'm going to place it in the classroom so you can see it in my section, using spacebar there to turn it around. The way that the family is built, although, and this is probably maybe something that could be improved with some of the out-of-the-box stuff that you get inside of Revit, the level's on 0 and the elevation from level is 0. So this probably should have been built with an offset rather than the way it has been built, which is that it's been built with just away from the 0, 0 inside the family. Little things to watch out for, like I say, when you download things from online, they'll probably be built slightly better than these are, but these are great if you just want a generic idea of what's going on in your project. So hopefully that's been useful. That's all we've got time for. Join us next week again for part 6 in the series, which I believe Rob will be covering, I'm not sure. But like I say, if you have any questions, do call us at Man and Machine. If you have any questions about adaptive families, I'd love to hear any questions about those. They're kind of the smoke and mirror side of Revit that people don't see or think of. They kind of see the straight lines, but Revit does a lot of curves and very complicated geometries if you need it to. So, like I say, I hope everyone's staying safe, staying well, and stay tuned for next time. And I'll catch you later. Bye.